Hey, we're always about servant leadership here at Last in Line Leadership. And this month in October as well, we're honoring, as you know, former military, former law enforcement, first responders in general. And came across a guy that I had to get on the show because his background just exudes service, servant leadership. And I want to talk about him for a second. His name's Blake Wright. He was a police officer for 2 years. He was a field training officer as well as SWAT team member. Left the force back in 2015, pursued some other interests, and then founded a company with his brother, Chad. And most of you that watch this podcast know who these guys are. But for those of you who don't, he and his brother, Chad, created what's called 3 of 7 Project. And Blake is now the president of this company. He serves also, again, there's that word again, serves. He's a servant, man of faith, serves as a firearm instructor, wilderness instructor, handles all things really within the operational side of the house for 3 of 7 Project. And man, I just want to formally thank him and welcome Blake Wright to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, brother. It's an honor to be on here and excited to dig into this.
Yeah, it's always good to meet new people, new like-minded people who are chasing after the same gospel, chasing after the same purpose, and knowing that we have the same eternity. Like, I think it's fun to meet people that are on that same page. So yeah, man, I guess, so the listeners, I know a little bit, not as much as I want to know, but for the listeners that aren't familiar with 3 of 7, man, talk about how that was born, where it's kind of how it's evolved, and really what the purpose of it is.
Yeah, so basically Chad had gotten out of, Chad is my brother, Chad Wright. He got out of the military, medically retired, and was just really looking for something to do. Me and him, he moved back to Georgia, moved into my basement, actually lived there for about 6 months. And so we were just thinking, like, we knew we wanted to do something in the world to help other people, but we didn't really know what that looked like. So we just, man, it's not like a big, like, idea light bulb story. We were just like, what can we do to help people out? And Chad loved podcasts and things like that. So we got the podcast going. We got some merchandise going. We didn't know what in the world we were doing, man. I mean, when we started, we had this little, like, I don't know, $75 USB Yeti mic for the podcast. And that, I mean, that was a big purchase for us, man. I mean, that, it seems crazy, but that was a big deal. Like, we talked like, man, do we really need to buy that? Should we just use computer audio? I think me and him scrounged up about $2,500 between the two of us that we could put into the business. So yeah, we got a website. We got a mic to do a podcast with. Chad didn't even have internet at his house. He was driving to a buddy's house to record them, and we got some shirts made.
What is it? What is 3 of 7? Talk about the name, how you came up with this.
Yeah.
Like, what is the whole project? Because it's 3 of 7 Project. What does that mean?
Yeah. So we decided that, well, we didn't decide it. We just know it, and we wanted to offer it to other people. So the name in itself is, the 3 is symbolic of that we believe everybody's a body, soul, and spirit. So you got 3 parts to your being, and the 7 is the biblical number for completion. So we believe that you have to not only pay attention, focusing on one of those 3 areas, but to be like who you are supposed to be, and to be most successful and fulfilled in life, you have to focus on all 3 of those areas. So you can't just be like a really solid athlete, but let your spiritual side dwindle, or vice versa. You can't be just dug into the Bible and let your body go downhill, So you have to focus on all 3 of those areas, and as equally as you can. It's like a balancing act, but as equally as you can, get all of those as sharp as you can to be the most effective person. And so we just exist through the podcast, through our courses we run, through even the products. Anything we offer is a resource for the listeners and supporters and followers of 3 of 7 to further sharpen all 3 areas of their being.
Yeah, and I think it's cool because as I listen to you guys on your podcast, like we were talking off air, you, Chad, Chili, who is the third member of this team, who isn't blood related, but like we were talking about, practically is. And you guys have created this program, this training program for people. Like, so Chad's an ultra runner, Chili is getting back more serious, I think, in it. He
Yeah.
was a high level at one point, even.
Yeah.
Well, we won't talk about him and Chad competition early in the days. So are you also an ultra? I know you do the PT with them, when they do it. You compete in races as well?
I don't know that you could say I compete. I guess I compete to an extent, but not to be first place. I've ran a couple 50 milers, 50K. So I've done a few ultra marathons.
Yeah.
I'm out there competing against myself, honestly.
Yeah.
Usually, me and a buddy or something will go running,
Yeah.
and to me, it's more about the time with them and learning things about myself. I like to compete, but I don't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
I do have the time, but I'm not willing to sacrifice other things because I got two little girls. So when
Yeah.
I got spare time, I do focus on my body, but not to the extent that Chad and Chili do. I just
Yeah. I mean,
don't. I spend it with the kids,
hey, I've got 4 kids, and I'm quite a bit older than you guys, but so every day, Monday through Friday, so I'm in the garage lifting weights, right? And so I'm focused on my body for that hour that nobody is bothering me, right? But you can't, I watched those guys do what they do, and we're getting a little off topic, but that's my fault. But anyway, I just thought I would address, I don't know how they do it. I mean, it's just a compliment to just their commitment level of how intense Chad, for sure is. But all your guys is following. So when you guys decided to do these courses, right? Basic courses, you got groups of people that come in, you guys train them for, I don't know, a day or two, or I don't know, even longer maybe, but you guys are shaping all 3 facets of that 3 of 7 you guys talk about. So you're living it and spreading it to people. Can you talk about some of the, I don't know, some of the cool moments that you've seen over the years, or, some of the things you've seen lives transformed beyond just physical endurance?
Yeah. So we offer a couple courses, and you're right. They are multiple day courses, and we don't ever want to just go. Now, some people will hire Chad to come speak, and that just is what it is. But if
Right.
we're putting on something, we want to give you the tools, and then we want to immediately give you an opportunity to implement those tools while we're there. So we do the basic course, which is a wilderness mission. We do
Mm-hmm.
the proving ground, which is like a kind of camp-based thing. And so the people that come out there, what's really cool to me is that they form such a strong bond among. So these are 8, like the basic course, for instance, is 8 team members coming from all
Mm-hmm.
over the country. They don't know each other. And by the end of the 3rd day, they're just like clicking. I mean, really, it's like they've known each other for 15 years. That to me, that's one of the really cool things. They're having weekly or monthly Zoom calls with just their team, checking in, helping each other out. They're going out on their own missions now. There's been several of them that have gone out, got their whole team together, and went out and did their own wilderness mission. And so, as far as from a team aspect, those are the really cool things that happen. But the stories that come in on like a more of a personal level of like people saying, "Hey, man, honestly, I was about to commit suicide and I
Mm-hmm.
attended your course and it turned my life around," or their marriage,
Yeah.
or restoring their relationship back to God. And so to me, that's like the fuel, right? Some people are in business for the money and
Right.
things like that. And when they get a big check, that pushes them, right, to do more and work harder. But I mean, you got to have money to live. But honestly,
Yeah.
I'm not just saying this, but if I got enough to pay the bills and
Yeah.
a little bit extra to have a good time with my family, I'm good to go. If I had $10 million right now, I honestly can say I would live no differently than I'm living
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Um,
That's awesome.
so for me, the fuel or the currency that I work for, if you will, is to
Yeah.
hear those stories of people's lives being changed. And so, man, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I will get like caught up and almost burned out on it just because it's so much. And I hear one of those stories come in, man, and it's like, that to me is it lights the fire. So,
Yeah.
That's a roundabout way of answering your question, but the strong bonds formed among the team, the relationships restored back to God, the marriages healed. And none of this is us. I'm not saying we're doing this. We are a conduit that God is working through.
I hear you. And like you said, those emails are just confirmation that you're doing the right thing, that you're right in line with what God called you to do. And you guys teaming up and you're just walking out obediently what you feel called to spread to other people. And it's being confirmed in those stories and in just how this thing's grown like crazy, in a short time. And so my listeners know that I'm a big analogy metaphor guy. And for you to say that on the third day of the course, people have this awakening almost. They have this bond that's confirmed and solidified. It's not to me, in my weirdness, I guess, it's not a coincidence on the third day. Some pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff happened a long time ago. And so, he resurrected on the third day. These folks maybe spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, physically resurrected their life a little bit from where it was, just from a story you just mentioned. So I love that. And I know it probably wasn't an accident that you decided 3 days to be like, that was probably intentional to do 3 days, right?
I mean, that's a good thought. We had really, I never considered it, but, really, that's just what it worked out to be. So,
yeah, okay.
Surprisingly so, that wasn't intentional, but,
cool.
that bond is built throughout the 3 days of the course, and then just by the end, it's just it's really amazing,
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's dive in a little bit to your law enforcement career. Yeah. So your brother, little older than you, had quite a journey as a Navy SEAL. Just becoming one alone, that story is remarkable in itself. So you're kind of watching that, and then you'd go into law enforcement. What made you choose versus did you ever consider following Big Brother's footsteps in military? What chose? Do you have this family pedigree that people are in either military or law enforcement? How did you make that choice?
Yeah, no, Chad was, I'm trying to think back. I think he's probably the only male as far back as I know that was in the military. Now, my dad, he was a law enforcement officer for a big majority of his life. And so therefore, we were around some buddies of his that were, and really he was the only other one I can think of that was in law enforcement. So, he was law enforcement, Chad was in the military, and I did have the urge and I guess desire for a little bit to go in the military, but to be honest, man, I'm just I don't want to say a homebody, but I'm more like I wanted to have a family, right? That was one goal that I wanted. I've loved kids all my life, so I knew that I wanted to put some roots down pretty early. I wanted to establish a family, and ultimately, I think that's what kept me home. Is that I knew if I went into the military, that would delay that process. And I couldn't be as good of a dad or husband being in the military just due to the environment those guys have to work in, right? So I just thought, I love guns, dude. I love guns. I love shooting. I don't want to say I love fighting, but I love the tactics and defensive tactics and things. And what dude doesn't like shooting, fighting, and driving fast, right? So I was young when I got in. I was 21 going through the academy. And so I think it was just, I just wanted to do something to really, I don't even think it was to do with serving the community, to be honest. I found that out later that that's what I liked about it. But initially I just thought it would be a really cool job. So I went up to the local county police, just real rural county, man. It's a big county, like 500 and something square miles. And so I went up there, put in my application, went through the process, and they hired me. So that's how I got into it. Yeah.
So that kind of over, like I said, it wasn't a long-lived experience in relation to some other folks, but did that fire just kind of fizzle out within you, or did you kind of find some other avenues that interested you that maybe you could tap into some of the same passions you had in a different way?
No, to be honest, the pay is what was bad over here on
Okay.
the East Coast, man. Is bad. Like, I mean, I when I quit, I was making less than $15 an hour.
Okay.
And so the things that I loved about the police department was, I mean, we had a really good team there. Like the shift had a really good bond and brotherhood, and you knew everybody had your back. Like physically they had your back. If someone was going to try to bring up some mess against you, you knew that they were going to back you up and be on your side. And so that
Yeah.
was really cool. And that's what I missed the most about it. But I'm getting that now through 3 of 7.
Right.
But really what got me out of it was just the pay. I had an opportunity to come up in construction. And I mean, I left there making less than $15 an hour and went and took this job, and was probably making $80,000 or $90,000 a year. So I like tripled my salary overnight.
Yeah. Well, so in the police force or in law enforcement, I would imagine that maybe there's some challenges to your faith along that journey, like in that 2 years of time. Because it sounds like to me, you guys were brought up in your faith. You were brought up in a Christian home. You guys are solid in your faith now as grown men. What are some challenges that people, I guess, that the listeners would benefit from that maybe you had to overcome as a Christian, in law enforcement, or some of the examples you had to set, or maybe even people that you kind of saw that, hey, okay, I want to be like that, that were strong in their faith too. Not saying everybody isn't. So what about your faith grew or was tested as a law enforcement officer?
Yeah. I remember before I went in, my dad's buddy that was in the police, he was a police for all of his career. And he told me, he said, it's going to be hard on your faith. He was a Christian too. And so you're right. Going into that, to me, the issue was that you see so many things, like it's all everywhere, but you get like a open lens into everything bad that's happening in that community. And, really it's easy to lose hope or faith, even though we as humans have no hope or faith or hope as a human, right? We're all going to screw it up, but
right.
It's easy to get down on that. And then just honestly, a lot of the people within the police department they're just, if they're Christians, they're not really living it out, right? So, I mean, the biggest thing that sticks out to me about faith when I was a police officer was banding together with the other Christians in the police department. And there was a few on my shift, and some of the other guys weren't, but every time, like, we'd come in and we'd have our brief right before the shift rolls out. So we'd come in and just catch up on what's happening. And we would always pray before the shift left. And we were like, hey, look, we're going to say a prayer. If you're not Christian, you don't want to hear it, that's fine. You can leave. So, kind of banding together with them strengthens your faith and your willingness to be bold in it, but it did take that step of just a couple of us coming out and saying, hey, we're going to do this. And then everyone else was on board. And there's this company, or I don't even know if it's a company, it might be a church or something, but they sell these little golden crosses that it's for law enforcement. You can pin it on your uniform or whatever. And they send them out for free. And I got like 15 or 20 of those. And so I just started handing them out. And it was pretty cool because it was a way to see like who was really interested or who wasn't.
Yeah.
And then, man, it was really cool with everybody wearing those. You would get a lot of comments like in court. Even aside, you'd be in a court case and the jury would be like, can I ask you about that cross on your uniform? And I'm like, yeah, you sure can.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you about Jesus, And so, and then going on calls and stuff, it really, you'd look down and see it. And to me, it was just a good reminder. That's where I learned that I really like to serve people, because you go out there, it's easy to get roped into, this is just another domestic call. This is just another traffic stop or another theft call or whatever. But really, it reminded me that every situation you're going to, whether it's like you might have to go fight this guy, or it's just somebody that's broken into their house, but they've called you there because they want you there. Some of them don't want you there, but
Sure. Yeah.
at any case, you're there and you have the right to be there, and they have to listen to you. And so you have their ear, and you can tell them whatever you want to tell them, right? I mean, you got to give them the law and what's going on. But that, man, listen, there was even people that I would lock up and take to jail for drugs or whatever the charge was. And I don't know, probably 60 or 70% of them I would pray with before we got out and went into the jail. I'd say, hey, look, man, I know you're in a tight spot. This is just my job, but we're here for a reason. Let me pray for you. And maybe it meant something to some of them. Maybe it didn't. I never saw the result of it, but I just felt called to do that. So I guess the encouragement would be like if you're in law enforcement and you're listening to this, like fill out your department and see who's there to have your back. But even if there's not, man, the Bible talks about none of us have strived unto death for our faith, and in the Bible they did. So like, you're not going to die because you share your faith with the department or with the people you're going out on calls to, and you have their ear, man. When you call the cops or you get pulled over, who are you listening to, right? I mean, like, all ears and eyes are on you. Yeah. And so I'd look down at that cross and I'd say, this is just an opportunity for me to treat these people the right way and not take advantage of whatever authority that I have.
That's a pretty cool way to look at it. Because, man, when I think of teachers in the school system, they can't do that. They can't take the liberty, right? If they're a Christian, they can't even utter the word Jesus or faith or Christian. But it's nice because when you get somebody in that squad car, you can tell them, hey, this is either going to be the best day of your life or the worst, because you're going to listen to me talk about Jesus and the hope that's in him. And then the fact that you're praying with them. Yeah, you got a captive audience. I mean, I like that. So hope that never changes, as we talk about where the world's going and government and that kind of thing. But,
and that's every day too, right? Like, even outside of law enforcement, everybody that you come in contact with, like, you have an opportunity you don't have to preach the gospel, but you can live it out in front of them, right? There's different ways to reach everybody. So it's just important about being intentional. I hate the buzzwords, man, but it's important about being deliberate about the words that you say and how you act around everybody that you're around.
Yeah. And I like what you said about isolation too, because it'd be easy when you mentioned there's some Christians in law enforcement that really aren't acting that way. Well, the environment has sort of sucked them in, right? They haven't influenced the environment because either they don't have that band of brothers that are Christians that they can lock arms, or they just kind of isolate and they don't want to be out in front with their faith. So then all of a sudden they're just kind of going with the current and going with the flow. And like you said, that was great advice, is, man, seek them out, because they might be more than you think in that same room as you, and get together, build that group, right? Build that group like you did. And I think that's cool, because we all need praying before and after, like at those, your briefings or after being on your shift. Like, I think there's power in that. And of all people, law enforcement definitely need to be covered in prayer. So, man, how did you become, you guys have these qualities, these disciplines in your family to push your bodies, right? To push yourselves, the endurance factor. Y'all have that resilience. And I would imagine that, Chad's came from his time in Navy SEAL training, right? In the military. Like, they make you either have that or you get weeded out real quick. But growing up, those kinds of things, did y'all just have good examples, and just what's made you who you are as far as the qualities like discipline, resilience, just perseverance? Like, because we talk about, the disciplines you might have gained from being in law enforcement, you might have learned some ways that shaped you. What has shaped you as a believer and as a man to this point in your life?
Yeah, man. I mean, and I would say initially, like, my experience with God was I just kind of come to this realization not even real long ago, but back in middle school. So we moved around a good bit growing up. And I remember think it was in like 6th grade. So I was going from elementary school to middle school. And then I switched school system. So I don't know anybody, right? And it was just a lot for me as a kid. And I remember being super anxious about it, so much that I had to go to the doctor, and they like prescribed me this anxiety medicine. And I mean, it for me, it was just bad. I just, my stomach would get upset. I just didn't want to go, right? And I remember thinking that, like, man, this is not sustainable. I don't like how this medicine makes me feel. I'm not going to keep taking it. There has to be some other way. And honestly, that's when I recognized my need for Jesus. So I'm answering your question about the spiritual side, how I came to, because really, when you ask someone their testimony, really, it needs to be the answer of, when did you realize that you needed Jesus in your life? And for me, that's it. I remember, like, I can't keep doing this. And I was able to, once I realized that, at the drop of a hat, unload all of that burden, stress, and anxiety off and say, I just got to trust you, Jesus, that you're going to handle this. And like, the worries were petty, right? I mean, it's so small, but for me as a kid, it was a big thing. I mean, school was like, that was the top of the line for me. That's all I knew. And so, my friends were gone. I didn't know anybody. And I don't even really know what was causing all of the anxiety, but I think it was just a conglomerate of everything. But that's when I realized I have to have some other higher power help to take this off of me. And I turned to Jesus, and he took it off of me.
Yeah. You took ownership, I can hold on to that story. Yeah. You took ownership and made it personal with yourself, not just a faith that your family had, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. When I was around it growing up, and so that's what I turned to. But that was when I first experienced Jesus. And from that point forward, I can hang on to that and know that when I get overwhelmed, it's not on, in the end, it's not on my shoulders, regardless what I'm doing, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. It's none of this stuff is in my control. So as far as my spiritual journey, that's kind of where it started. And then, it kind of grew and built. And then I got in high school, and I mean, I was lukewarm is what I was. Like, I would say, yeah, I'm a Christian, but I wasn't really living it out, and didn't do anything real crazy. And then I just came back to know the Lord even deeper.
Yeah.
When I met my wife, and she was in church. So as far as that side of things, that was really my journey. And I just continued to build on it.
Yeah.
Up to the point I'm at today. And then
that's awesome. No, go ahead.
I was just going to shift into like the physical side of things. And, it's interesting, the questions you're asking, because I mean, I guess I've thought them some, but I haven't really ever pondered on them too deep. But if I'm thinking about like my exercise and stuff, and we were always outside doing stuff as kids, but once I became, like a teenager or whatever, Dad was going to the gym. So I would always ride up there with him and his buddy. We would work out. And then I got into doing some jiu-jitsu, and I mean, not competitive or anything, just taking classes, a good workout. And I like doing it, but I was more on the weightlifting side growing up. I was never like too strong, but that was what I did. I didn't run or anything like that. And really, so I think that kind of built my base. And then when Chad got out of or when he was getting out of the SEALs, he went and ran that 50-mile race up in Damascus, Virginia. It's called the Iron Mountain 50-miler. And he told me that, he said, oh, it wasn't, I knew it was bad. I seen him afterwards. He was beat up bad. And a couple weeks went by, and I kind of forgot about that image of him. And he said, oh, you ought to go do that, Blake. It wasn't really that bad.
I can hear him saying that. I can hear him telling you that.
And somehow I let him con me into doing that, and I signed up. And I remember I texted him a few times, and I was like, man, do you really think I can do this? I was like, that's a long way to go. And he's like, oh yeah, you got it. And we went and got it done. It was rough, but we got it done. And so what I'm saying is, I think I built that foundation maybe of enjoying the exercise, just building a base of fitness. And I really think Chad fostered that afterwards. He just came out. I mean, he's my big brother. He's my best friend. And, we haven't been close our whole life, but we've never had any big falling outs or anything like that. And so we've always maintained some sort of communication. I've always looked up to him. And so he would always, I remember he'd send me like emails of workouts that they did or this program they're doing. And so it was just challenging me to
Mhm.
continue doing that, and that really pushed me on to the next level by him doing that and then running the race. And so
Yeah.
it's just having him in my life that challenged me and pushed me to continue doing that. And
Yeah. Well, people listening, I mean, I think when we're talking about physical shape, being in shape, fitness, whatever, just nutrition, health. And I just talked about this. I taught this at our men's class this week at church. And I, nobody wants to hear finances and physical health. Nobody wants to hear that message.
you're right
And
about
because
that.
the amount of habit forming, sacrifice, discipline that you have to develop, and then you don't just see the results immediately. So people listening right now, hopefully what your story motivated them to do about just going and doing that race, even though you're like talking yourself out of it the longer it goes on. And if he didn't spur you on, maybe who knows what would have happened. But people listening, man, I think it's just a matter of start somewhere. I think it's just a
That's
matter
it.
of get to a point where you feel your body's being tested and then stop, move to the next day, test it a little more, and I keep saying, we got way more in us than we think we do. And that
Yeah.
could apply to anything other than just, physical strength or endurance. Like that can go with our faith, that could go in our relationships, whatever. Like when we think we're at a threshold, we can actually probably push a little further and do that one
Oh
more
yeah.
mile, right? When you're at mile 49, you're probably like, okay, that was good. I'm good. I practically did it. I pretty much did it, right? But you got another gear that you end up finding out about that you wouldn't have known about at mile 2. But that right there, I don't know, 50 miles. I don't know that I see that in my future, but never say never, right?
Hey, you got it in you, brother. You just said it. You
Right,
just said you
right.
got more in you than you know. So you got
That's
it in you.
right.
And
Let's
let me tell
start,
you,
but we don't want to start at 50 maybe. If I don't
that's
run
what
and
I
haven't
started
run in
at.
like 30 years, I don't know about.
That was the first race I ever ran, man.
Wow. Okay. And okay, so
I
let's
think
talk
I
about
found.
how much you wanted to die after. Was that it wasn't as bad as you thought?
Oh, it was rough. It
Okay.
was bad rough. I had some bad stomach problems. Probably from about mile 15 to maybe, I don't know, 35 or 40.
Yeah.
Man, my stomach was in not. I mean,
That's
I'm talking
awesome.
about it was bad. I was.
That's
There was a point where I just stopped on the side of the trail and just like laid down in the fetal position, and I pouring down rain. I was like, I don't care. I got to get my stomach to stop somehow,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
eventually it cleared up. But
That's
yeah, you
awesome.
talk
That makes
about
me want to
finding
run
another
right out and do
gear.
it. That makes me want to run right out and do it. Hearing
You
that.
need to, son.
Definitely. Of course. Yes. Well, okay, so maybe I'll look into that. I don't know. Maybe I need to start with your basic course first or something.
Heck
But
yeah,
I've
man.
got some buddies that have done that course and they loved it. So man, what if you're going, like, talk to some of the younger folks now that are listening, maybe in their early. Well, you're young too compared to me and others, but some of the folks that maybe are contemplating military, contemplating law enforcement, even maybe a younger version of yourself when you knew you were going in. Like, you have any advice along those lines for people as to what to expect from a mental standpoint, a faith standpoint? Like, you have any encouragement for them? Like, if they're, would you say don't do it? Would you say, hey, this is a great line of work and here's why? Or what would you give them as far as just kind of a heads up on?
You know, I think every situation is specific, and what I would say is don't go in the military because your family went in the military. Don't go in the military because your big brother went in and you think it's
Mm-hmm.
cool to be a Navy SEAL,
Mm,
because you can only be what God has called you to be, right? I
right.
tell this metaphor all the time, like, our body, our physical body, is a representation of the body of Christ, right? Like, the head gets all the attention, it's got the brain in it, right? It's like the thing everybody's looking at,
Right.
it's getting it done. But sometimes you might just be the old ugly pinky toe that's curled up under on your foot, and
Hey.
that's just what you're just supposed to provide balance to the rest of the body. So what I'm saying is that if you genuinely feel like, not even feel, if you, I mean, first it starts with a relationship with God, right? Because then you
Yeah.
don't know. So
Right.
once you have that, in my opinion, you got to know, you got to sort through your what it is you're supposed to be doing. And so what I'm getting at is I don't want to say, yeah, I think it has a lot of really good things going in the military and law enforcement, but it also has a lot of bad things in it, just like everything else in the world. And so if it's not what you're meant to do, you're not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to be successful. It's going to suck. You're going to hate it. And if it is what you're supposed to do, it might still suck and you hate it, but in the end, you're going to be like, well, I'm fulfilled in this, right? Like it's filling me up doing this because this is just who I am and what I'm supposed to be doing. So really, you can write out a pro and con list, but in the end, to me, that doesn't matter. If I had went in the military, I can tell you right now, I would have hated it. Now, I would have had a lot of cool stories to tell. Like I would have learned a lot of lessons. I would have added to my resume. Like I would have had good insurance. A lot of good things would have came from it. And there's a lot of pros right there. But that one con that says that's not what you're supposed to do, that just busts all the rest of those out.
Yeah. And it wasn't in your heart. It's got to be in your heart. It's got to feel like not even a calling at that point, because sometimes we don't know it's a calling until we actually step out into it, right? But if it's not in your heart, and when every time you think about it, you get this anxiety versus peace about it. That's your answer, right? So a lot of people that get into law enforcement do it for the reasons you said earlier. They feel like they're following in somebody's footsteps, or it's just what's expected of them. And I like the analogy you gave, like the brain can't be the toe and the toe vice versa. Like even if they want to be, they're not wired to be. So we got to find that in ourselves. So man, I'm going to finish out with this. And I don't even know that I don't even think I gave you a heads up on this question, but you're gonna crack up because I hear you guys talk a lot about the government and where it's going, where it's headed, like where it's been, where it is. I'm on board with all your perspectives. So I'm going to give you maybe a little bit of the power here. You're president for a day. What's the first couple things you would implement? Like you don't have to get it approved by anybody. Like you stamp it, it's done in that moment immediately, real time. What are a couple things you think we need to see done immediately?
Yeah, man, gosh, that's a big question, John. I don't know that
First of all, you would probably decline that opportunity and say, no, thank you. When they said, Blake, you're the president for a day, you'd be like, I don't want that. But no, I mean, where we're going as a culture, maybe. Yeah.
I think to me, and it's an overarching, I guess, a general answer, but to me, the biggest problem is that all the freedoms are being taken away. Right. So, I mean, that if there was one thing you could do, it would be that, and it would be 100 different things that you would have to go in and change. But, if I was president, I would probably cancel all the news channels.
There you go.
Perfect. Because in my opinion, all they put out is the bad things, the trash, or I don't even watch the news, so I don't even really know. When I quit watching it, that's what they were doing.
Well, when I heard the acronym of the news was negative entertainment without substance, that's what news stood for. Like I cut it off, right? Just cut it off. Yeah. So good. Freedoms. I agree, man. There's a lot of directions that things are going. Just state government, even all the way down to local government, is scary where some of this stuff's going. But I've listened to enough of y'all's podcasts where if I asked Chad that question, I'm thinking he would say taxes we would just cut taxes altogether.
Hey, that's a freedom, man. That's a freedom. They're taking our money. That's a freedom. You can throw it out there, but
the dollar isn't really what it used to be, is it? No. All this currency is really kind of a joke now. So that's why folks are spending money on other things that are maybe more currency down the road if this thing goes south. That's it. Yeah, man. So I appreciate you answering. That was put you on the spot, but that was a great answer.
That's fine,
man. Tell the audience where they can find, the 3 of 7 resources, how they can maybe just sign up for a course if they want. I got listeners all over the country. So maybe one day y'all could make a trip to Texas and do a course out here. But man, where can we find some of the resources from y'all?
Yeah, man. We're on Instagram mainly. We're on Facebook too, but we're more active on Instagram. It's just 3 of 7 Project. And then if you go to our website, which is 3of7 Project with the numbers, not spelling them out, it's got all of our information on there. So you click experiences and it's got the basic course, and that'll tell you the upcoming dates, how to apply. The proving ground is the more, it's hosted in a camp setting, but it's just a different experience. And that's got a link to go sign up and a little bit of information about there. And if you wanted to book Chad for a speaking engagement, I don't speak. Chad is the only one who speaks, but and I don't care to speak. So that works out good. But if you want to book Chad to speak, there's information on there. So everything's on the website. But if you want to just keep up with what's going on, you're best to go get on the follow us on Instagram. We post all the podcasts on YouTube. It's on Apple, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're at. And it's just the 3of7 podcast.
Yep. And that's, I would encourage everyone. I think I've shared a few episodes. I know I've shared a few with my son who's 22 and he just got out of college, got a job. And man, I sent him a couple of the podcasts and it's cool to hear you guys just unapologetically out in front with your faith and sitting around, like you said, just a couple dudes at the dinner table, chopping it up. And you guys are real. You guys are real. And that's what I was talking to Eddie Penny last week, and he said, isn't it weird that we have to comment of how authentic and real people are? It's kind of sad that we have to point that out because it's so rare, but you guys are authentic. You guys are real. Audience, man, this has been a great time to hear from Blake's perspective, to hear about the company that he and his brother started, to hear about resilience and how we can build that in ourselves. And we got a little more in the tank than we think we do. So with that, he's been Blake Wright. We've been Last in Line. Be blessed.